say that to impress. I say that basically to impress upon you that you can learn, do, and have anything you want if you surround yourself, number one, people smarter than you are. Number two, check your ego at the door. Number three, you're not infallible in your thinking. And number four, there are tools out there in the marketplace, once you identify them correctly, through either proper mentorship or proper coaching.
Welcome to Business Breakthrough Show with Ted Miller III, where every single episode is hosted live to help you uncover a breakthrough to the single greatest challenge you have in getting your business to where you really, really want it to be. So call in, comment, or share. Now, here's your host, Ted Miller III.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for being here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on where you're at around the world, assuming you're attending with us live. If you're checking out a podcast, remember, you can always go to businessbreakthroughcommunity.com and come attend live. I would love to have you here. So this community is built of entrepreneurs to help support each other because, well, frankly, we're facing double-digit inflation and, a recession. So we know, well, for those of us that have some gray hairs, maybe some of us are dyeing it to hide it, or the hair has grown, it grows further to the back. We've been there, done that. Personally, for me in this space, it started after .com going .bust. I spent $40,000 of money I couldn't afford on J. Abraham. I don't know if you guys were ever fans of Tony Robbins' Power Talk series back when there was the cassettes were a thing, but that's what I was leveraging. I was listening to this exact cassette. He was interviewing J. Abraham. I listened to the thing so much. I spent 40 grand and it was great. And it got me through 9/11. And then I turned around and boom, we get some momentum. I partner with Jay Levinson, J. Abraham, Chad Holmes, but then boom, 2007 hits. So what do? I get a new mentor and a new face into my community, Tony Robbins, and we went out and pioneered business mastery. So $100 million and $250,000 clients later, we're faced upon another recession. So it's, with gratitude that I'm able to put together a community like this so we can get together and share breakthroughs. Now, some even people here have not just been clients, some have been coaches. People have worked with me to help others implement these proven business growth strategies and tactics. But just like you, they've got challenges in growing their own business. So we're going to keep it real here. We'll be very vulnerable, as well as it's not bragging when it's true. So be as transparent as possible on what your breakthrough is. So I'm really looking forward to it today. But John, you were driving last week. Didn't get a chance to chat with you in the hot seat. So I'm kind of curious, if you don't mind, set the tone. What do you see right now as your single greatest challenge? Because don't worry, I'm going to let you share what the single greatest breakthrough is that you've ever experienced in your business. But right now, what's your greatest challenge you're facing to get your business closer to where you really want it to be, John?
I mean, for us, it's my wife and I running the show. We really don't have a lot of depth of management. We really need to add a fairly senior person to help share some of the load and also make it possible for us to, not be tied to the business 24/7.
Yeah, said well. And that story has been told time and time and time again. Entrepreneurs that go out and they start it on their own, and somewhere along the line, they realize when it's only them, they own a job to some degree. Unless they get out there and get it done themselves, they're trading dollars for hours. So what's kept you from getting that next level of management, trained up, hired up? What's kept you from doing so already?
Well, I mean, for a long time, it was really just financial and trying not to, overextend. And, also we prided ourselves on the fact that, the people could come directly to us. So we had a flat organizational chart.
So pride can get you like that, right? A lot of people doing personal brands, they love being the face of their brand. They love the ego, the significance they get from it. And yet it very much gets them into a place to where, they're spending, if they're not doing a job, they're still doing the job called social media, and they're spending 2.5 hours having to respond to every single social media post. If you love it, do what you love. If it's not in that zone, well, it might be time and opportunity for you to delegate it. So what you do to get enough cash flow to be able to warrant even having conversations about bringing on another expense called employee? What changed? What was your big breakthrough?
COVID-19.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in the real estate space, so it's been a crazy 2.5, 3 years in real estate. So all the belt tightening and expense cutting that we did in the prior years really, fell to the bottom line, when people
Nice.
were buying houses like crazy and prices were going up.
Good. Well, congratulations taking advantage of that. There are cycles. We talk about that in our business mastery transformation program. Several of you have gone through that. And we talk about what that logical cycle is. And we talk about what season we're in now. And so we can have the power of anticipation to mitigate that risk. So, well, that's really interesting. I'll go first and I'll share a perspective that I had, John. I done the same thing. Well, what I tell you was, so 2000-ish, I hired Jay Abraham, but I wasn't working with them, not for 2 years later, John. I was just trying to get .com wealthy. Everyone's getting wealthy in .com. So I was chasing down the .com cash. My wife was in tech companies, and so she was making more money than me. So I thought that's maybe where I can make my cash. But that's not what I ended up doing. I fell in love with this because of the impact I had. And it was very much early stage. It was with Chet Holmes. He did a personal brand for only one reason. We were going to build a company around Jay Abraham, and that guy flaked. He just had an ADD moment, like all of us. We have a tendency to be a little ADD in our business. And he flaked out in that moment because it took a lot of discipline and fortitude to follow through and take action. And he failed to do so. So we went on without him. So Chet stepped up to write a book, and he's a great writer. He took an early retirement, really honed his skills in telling great stories, put together a great book. But more impressively is we built momentum before the book. And the conundrum we had was Chet used to say to me, and he'd lie, he'd say, "You're one in a million." It's maybe not a lie, but I let my ego, because I really had, he had a huge significant ego. I'm not saying anything malicious about my late partner and my friend. It just, he had one. And Terry can speak intelligently of that. So can Miguel. Both have worked with him in the past. And so I started getting it too, because now I have, Tommy Hopkins calling me the greatest, Brian Tracy calling me the greatest, new partner Tony Robbins looking at me going, "You're best salesperson I ever met in my life." So my ego starts getting bloated a little bit, John. So guess what? I'm still doing the stuff. But we're like stuck at $3 million of revenue. So the second I recognized that, true leaders aren't leading the pack, we're creating new leaders. And I was able to take the best insight I had, and I created a next level of presenters. That was one way I got off, John, was being known as one of the best. Was I'd do a thing and I'd speak and we'd sell some stuff. And so I stopped doing that. I found a team that was better than me. Instead of thinking I was the absolute best, I went to where the best were hanging out, John. Like, I don't know what kind of leader you're looking for, but for me, I needed someone who could speak and sell. So I went to a buddy's event. I met him at Speakers Authors Networking Group, and he said, "Hey, I train speakers on how to sell from stage." And I was like, "Dude, I sell virtually all the time." And he's like, "Yeah, I teach people." I was like, "I wish I could find people that could sell." He goes, "I train people on how to sell virtually on stage." I was like, "Yeah, but we don't do seminars. We're doing it virtually. It's like an online seminar." And then finally, it took me like 2 hours to wake up, and I realized this guy's training all the people that could and should come work for me. And it changed everything in a heartbeat. Dave Asarno was one of many. He was a past client, helped him with his business. He was a huge advocate of our program because he'd gone through it himself personally. And I went to recruit people in the audience. He was one of them. And that guy worked 1 day a week, and I paid him like 114 grand a year for 2 years in a row because he was so skilled to just flex brilliantly on a Friday. And Doug Brown, he was a past client of mine, helped him. So, John, something for you to consider is that sometimes your next layer of leadership, they weren't your existing staff. They could be existing clients. I don't know if you know this statistic, but LinkedIn revealed that 60% of all of your placed key staff members were once removed from you. They're a friend of a friend. Any of you guys catch this data? So everyone's out like trying to hunt down the next big, staff member. But reality is it's not 7 degrees to Kevin Bacon. It's just one. And so if you can get a really good program, in my case, I just needed to ask. I just needed to create a position to say, hey, we're looking for, and people started raising their hand. So I don't know what your journey is going to be willing to do so. For me, that you mentioned cash flow. I saw it as, well, there's only so much money for each activity. And Chet and I had already renegotiated our compensation plan when Jay Abraham left, because I was unwilling to put money into this new thing we're doing called radio ads. And it was expensive for me. So we renegotiated our compensation plan, and, I had to learn something there. And I was like, I don't know if I could afford this, but I realized a smaller percent of a much larger figure. So I came up with a full compensation plan, John. That meant I was overpaying staff, but I got better quality staff. So by overpaying, way more than 10% of the market shares average. So I don't know what your USP is, but you want to find what it could be. And maybe in my case, look at your network, which could be your past clients, and then find a strategic advantage that's really compelling, where they know they could have a compelling future, and provide that. They're going to be more likely to work with you than anyone else. Have you ever gone to your past clients to see if any of them are currently looking for new opportunities?
We've done that for admin positions, but never for executive level.
Yeah. Another client, Link Selling. So Josh is like, there's no way I'm going to hit up my past clients. For some reason, they were all triggered by it. And his co-founder, Ben, was there. And I was like, why? I was like, why would you completely ignore those that you say are near and dear to your heart? They're already proven to be a culture fit. Otherwise, they wouldn't be paying you for your services. Why would you completely ignore them? And second, they also had gone through their list so often that the CEO, the face of the brand, was doing JVs, and it kind of wore out the list to where they were all kind of rubbed raw of constant. Oh, here's another promo, another, I know it's going to lead to a high ticket closing sales call, so I don't want to click on his link. Otherwise, they're going to stalk me like crazy. So they're kind of, his clients got all kind of a click sensitive because he emailed so harshly. So I said, well, great. The number one, couple reasons why people open their emails. One is who it's from. I say, just get a new voice. I said, so Ben, send it from Ben. He's like, no, I don't send email. I was like, you're sending the damn emails. No big deal. Don't worry. It's going to be through your automated system. It's just going to come from your URL, your email. And sure enough, it was the highest open rate. What was that, Terry?
I said, I do it all the time, but I do it by text, not by email.
Yep.
And I do it for birthdays. And it's amazing how many times they're willing to have a chat and see how things are going, and it leads from there.
Birthdays and New Year's, everyone's reconsidering their life calling, the purpose in life. I love that, leveraging a pending events, which, by the way, is given on LinkedIn. If any of you guys are on LinkedIn.
So they see it so much more often than, I don't know about everybody else, but I get like thousands of emails. It's crazy, but a text they see.
Yeah, DM specifically, like text, but direct messages on certain formats, especially when they're not bot driven, Terry, it can be very fresh. And the way you make it fresh is you highly customize it. You have to take the sweat equity to make sure people know this is not just an automated email that sent out to 1,000 people. You find a way to customize it. Now, I'm not saying, Terry, that you should do this, because LinkedIn might not be happy for you for doing such a thing, because I don't know what their terms and conditions are currently, but you might even be paying third-party staff members or vendors to go in and communicate on your behalf, to highly customize first sentences. What I mean by that is maybe someone's done that, and I would teach them how to go to their website. That's right, Bill. And they go about us, and they'd see the great story I love is the CEO's the husband. So he called himself the chief excitement officer or something crazy. And then she's the chief people officer. And then they had a chief marketing officer, not marketing officer, barketing officer. It was their dog in their office. So the reply, their first sentence on the DM, the guarantee to get the reply was, hey, I've got a chief marketing officer too. Her name's Rosie. She's a Great Dane. I'm curious. I can't tell. What type of dog is yours? Send. Next to you send, picture of your chief marketing officer. No way in hell you're not getting a reply there. And then after that sentence, it has the standard boilerplate material. It's going to allow you, hey, by the way, Wesley, last time you weren't able to come in. I'm going to try to promote you to panelist, see if you can come on in, okay? So that was a really good one. And Wesley's really good. He gets paid a lot of money to help people market. I know you want to get the bigger, better clients, but I'm just kind of curious. Have you ever helped any of your staff members effectively market towards their next level of leadership, either marketers, managers, salespeople, whatever it may be? Wesley, have had anything to offer in that area?
Helping my previous staff members move up to other
or your own staff, if you got any own personal breakthroughs you want to share.
Honestly, I feel like my company has been kind of like a Green Bay Packers of companies, and that is they come here, they get paid decent, but they learn a bunch of stuff and then they move on to bigger and better contracts because I'm like, I think I'm going to go get another draft pick. So yes, I feel like I have, but I don't know. Like, I don't know if I can add as far as the benefit, except I will say this. One of the good thing about that is these are good people. So clearly, like, they go on to make a lot more money. It's just in my company, when they get to that level and they need to make what they need to make, I just am not like, I don't know, like, again, I'm like the Green Bay Packers. I'm not going to pay that contract. It locks up too much money. So I prefer a draft and develop method, keeping a couple stars, really high-end stars, and paying them, and then letting that kind of flow through and draft and develop the rest of the team.
Tony Robbins said the same methodology. I say had because I'm only speaking to when we were partners back in the day, which we're not now. So I'm not speaking for his current strategy. But he would churn and burn, staff members.
They stay a while typically, because it takes time to build the skills. They stay because of the love,
the connection, the learning. And then once they realize, wait a minute, I can make more money for profit optimization.
Yeah.
He wouldn't pay more, like you shouldn't, or the Green Bay Packers, they're able to just go recruit.
Right. But if they're an Aaron Rodgers, then I keep them.
That's
so
right.
I'm not stupid. Right. So you kind of have to weigh your options. Like, what is the role? What is what are the ups and downs with that? So that's just kind of how I've done it. And I feel like now I want to do that in some more areas. But in the areas I have done, it's worked out very well. They've been with me for like 15 years plus. So very loyal group.
You don't have with them. That's great. We're all envious of that because I got about a 7.5 year run and they flip. So for my winners, about 7.5 years, they go do something else. And sometimes even a percentage of those get to come back again and play again because they want to be like their own hero on their own show, run their own event. And they're like, that's tough. Like that sucked. All the money I made with you, I spent on my own company and now it's all gone. Can I come back? Like that's a very common theme. But Wesley, something that's worth repeating there is your willingness to hire and train up. My best second in command well, I have several, but I'm thinking right now of Rosina. She was hired at the lowest possible position. In fact, she was only hired because her husband worked for me, a pastor, who failed to log out, and he felt obligated and guilty that he quit the company, but he posted up more sales after he quit than he did when he was working for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then he sends me a text. He says, hey, we need to chat. I have a confession to make. And I'm like literally my first call is like, this Jonathan, like Pastor Jonathan. You're like, what world am I in that the pastors like coming to confess to me. This is not the world I'm in. This is like Twilight Zone. And make a long story short, she just got sick and tired of the phone ringing, and she picked it up and followed the script that was on his desk. And she kept climbing up. She kept climbing up and kept creating opportunities. And her and her husband together made $42,000 together. You don't get paid a lot when your commitment is to contribute to your society as a pastor. You're not wealthy. So they were making that a month the last time we had worked together. So your willingness to pick them up, sometimes inexpensively, they can be one of the greatest assets and get paid very highly if you have a great, training program to level them up.
Something I ended up doing to do that, like, because some of the people I picked up that way were through, I called it the LEAP program. It was like learn, engage, acquire, prepare.
Yeah.
And I would start looking at basically graduates or, just people. You didn't have to be in college. It didn't really necessarily matter.
But that is a convenient sign that they're probably going to be less expensive for you.
Yeah. They're either in college or they might have experience not in college, but you typically around the same age, because I advertise it as an internship. And I say it may be paid, it may be not. It just depends, because the people who apply for that, I end up paying everyone because just legalities is just way easier. And then I would go and do that, and we'd get a lot of applicants. So I would do like a summer program. So it'd be like, hey, for the next 3 months and the next whatever. And then I would hire on maybe, 3-4 people, usually within a week or two. You kind of could trim down. And I actually I had one girl just like, she was just working hard, learning everything, trying to do everything. She was just taking on all the different roles. I think the only thing that happened is we had COVID, and then, once we closed down the office and stuff, we had to restructure some things, but she ended up going on to actually start her own, I think, social media company or something like that. But it's just kind of crazy the stuff you find in there. And she wasn't in college, but she was super motivated. I think she had she had self-educated, had just got her own self like a Google certification or something like that. So those are the things you're looking for. And they just want to prove themselves, and you'd have to reward fast. I did make a mistake by waiting a little bit too long.
Yeah. Shame on you. That means you probably don't reward yourself fast enough.
No, definitely not.
The way you do big things might be the way you do the small things. So you might not be giving yourself enough attaboy, and you might be too harsh on yourself as well. And this may or may not be true, but what I know of you, you may be a little too heavy-handed on the humble/shy side of life as your identity, for the masculine energy that's here, feminine energy sees it like we're always braggadocious, bumping chest because we want to like see who's lining up in the room. Yet more often than not, we're like the hardest. So I think that's something that you can find a way to do that on a more regular basis. Little wins, find a way to do an attaboy, a little Tony Robbins in your life, if you will, just to make sure you incite the emotion on a regular basis, because that lack of sensory acuity, recognizing that someone else might need some form of love language other than what you're used to giving. What's your love language? Do you know what yours is? You guys remember those 5 love languages?
Yeah. Isn't it like
physical touch, words of affirmation?
I do acts of service. So
you're an acts of service. My wife's an acts of service. So I'm married to Sherry. What's everyone's love language? Sherry, I'll start with you. His is acts of service. You know what yours is?
Words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation. Mine's physical touch, then words of affirmations. My second one. John, what's yours? Do you know what yours is? How do you like to receive love? Do you love to be told you're great? You love someone to give you a hug? Do you love someone to spend quality time with you? Just do something for me, or give me a gift and get out of the way. Which one was it?
Quality time, probably.
Quality time. Yeah. Terry, do you know what yours is?
Yes. Words and affirmations, hugs, all of that.
Yeah. Words of affirmation. Text your husband, make sure he's remembering. Miguel, how about yourself?
I'm not familiar with that tool, but it would have to be quality time.
Quality time. It was, I think it's called Love Languages.
Yes.
Bill, do you remember what yours was or is? What does that mean? Words of affirmation. Words of affirmation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'd say like chunk, most men, not all men, but like majority, meaning over 50%. Usually it's physical touch and words of affirmation fit up there. So when you have something like acts of service, it's a great gift to have, because you can be fresh and very unique, like Wesley. That's a great opportunity. The reason is because we have a tendency to kind of behave the way we want to receive it, right? If I love physical touch, that's why I'm like, I'll go to TNC and I want to hug everyone. Right. And I went back to the last
Oh, yeah,
TNC.
definitely
It was
not.
right after COVID, and everyone was a little like, hug zone sensitive. And I just come bum rushing in. And I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe not everyone. It feels the, physical touch love. Maybe they just want to be told something graciously, So I haven't seen my business partner in a long time. And Amanda, she does a little bowing, no physical contact for, I don't need someone's negative energy or attachments, so it's just a little hand gesture and a bow. And I was like, all right, well, I'll do better than just coming in bum rushing for a hug.
Well, it's great to recognize what yours are and realize that, again, it might not be your mates or your friends or whatever, because it's the same thing with your clients. What do they like? And not particularly like hugs and stuff like that, but the whole personality piece.
Yep.
Terry's right about that. And it's interesting because years ago, I actually created a course called the Man Class that was based on some of the things that were in the 5 love languages. But I actually said that there's 7, and there's actually a couple of considerations in multiple dimensions. It's more like a matrix, because honestly, if you think of it, that 5, it's just too basic. There's too many other factors. And
that's man code. If it's 1, 2, 3, it's too many. I mean, Sherry, we want to make everything linear and simple, so we just chunk it. It'll make it easier for us to digest.
You can chunk it with and understand the other considerations so that you have more power.
Yeah, I married a lady who is born on a cusp, so meaning first day of summer. And one of them is a Gemini, so I wake up next to 2 ladies to begin with, and then she's on a cusp, and then I got that Cancer. So I got 3 different versions of who I might wake up next to, and sometimes I got to poke around a little bit to see which one's there. Hi. Oh, she's not saying something. That could be a cue. Okay.
Well, you can use the code breaker technique. It's the bank code, and that will tell you whether somebody's, whether they're into rules or whether they're all into nurturing people, or whether they want more information, or whether they're an action person. And if you know that, it's so much easier to talk with them.
Yeah. You can tell you're talking to a coach that helps human beings become more efficient together when they're talking like that, right? I mean, we've got professors on the line here today. We got people who have accomplished great things in business, and all human beings here are fantastic. Hey, Alex, just want to let you know, if you want to comment on the panelist, you can. Same thing with Karen. She's someone that provides a service as I've leveraged, that maybe they help you do some social media stuff that I mentioned earlier. I don't know if she can speak to whatever the terms are on LinkedIn, but that's the outfit I've used. They've got me in a lot of conversations and engagements. And if you've not met Karen, you've met Craig Hanley if you've gone to TNC before, and that's her business partner. So glad to have you here, Karen. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
It's really important for me to be here. We just came back from the biohacking conference with Dave Asprey last week. It was an amazing event. We got the opportunity to, coordinate with their team. I never like to take all the credit on whatever we do, but it was amazing to see 5,000 people just, very thrilled on the event, everybody networking. And Dave actually mentioned our name in the stage, and you can imagine right now, our emails, but I wanted to be here.
Wow, I'm so glad you are. You've helped out a lot, and there's plenty of people, that can help in many different ways. So that's a part of this community, is they share the best thing that they've ever picked up. So let's do one of those. What is one of the best things? I mean, Karen, so, we're just chatting. So what's the absolute best breakthrough you've experienced since you've launched this new division / company? single greatest breakthrough in hindsight, looking back, what shortened your learning curve? What made life easy? What's your code to success, Karen? You want to share?
Oh my God, I'll say that's a very good question. Well,
God's a good one. You can hang our hat on that.
yeah, I'll let somebody else answer and then I'll keep thinking because
No.
I think every day it's an opportunity for a breakthrough. Like
Yeah.
every day I just see something and I'm amazed. I think right now, the moment that I really understood that our team is, it's, dealing, every business owner is always dealing with trust issues, right? Because you think you can do it better, because you think you can, excel, and then giving that trust to my team 100%, closing my eyes and saying they can do it, and then letting myself be amazed by their job. We have a team of 60. Well, the call center has 1,200 people, but I just run the one with 60 people, and then I'm super shocked and surprised. So that, like,
That's right.
working, because you have to work with yourself first, right? Just making sure that you are the one, that it's really, because corporate culture or culture just starts with, the person that it's running the company. Sometimes you want to blame other people for not doing their jobs, but the truth is the whole corporate culture comes from, the top.
Well, so you said two things. I want to repeat them. One is her openness, which I've witnessed through the months that we worked together. She's always looking for an innovation, a way to do something better. So that unto itself gives you an advantage from constantly being open to strategic insight. Yet trusting your team to run with the ball. Boy, I know if we've done a thing for a long period of time, it's hard to let go because chances are no one's going to care more than you. And therefore, you doubt anyone's going to do it better than you. Yet having that faith, that's where that comes in. When you do that, like I said, I doubt it because everyone already told me I'm the best. Like, I'm 1 in a million. You're never going to find that. And then there's Doug Brown. There's Davis Hardo I mentioned earlier. And they go off and they just knock it out of the park. And they just crush it. And they do things I would have never thought of doing before. And just that willingness, that faith to cut loose and let someone do something you've done before, they might just impress you. And John, I hope that's a situation you have for your guys' organization, because you deserve it for sure. Find 30 people like Karen's that are just stellar and knocking out of the park. So that's a really beautiful insight. Sherry, do you got a insight you want to share? Because then I'm going to go to Professor, see what he's got to share.
I think the most important thing, and this really ties into what Karen was saying, is really we are people and we are selling to people. And yes, we may have technology and things that help do things faster, but the two very basic human factors is gratitude as well as forgiveness. People make mistakes, and sometimes if they make a mistake, they may be too embarrassed to even reach out or talk. So reach out to them and tell them, it's okay. And so that they don't have to take the first step. Always that, taking the time to reach out and, say thank you and forgive. And it works, whether you're dealing with a partner, your kid, or you're dealing with an employee.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I want to jump on your bandwagon a little and state that there's a lot of power in that, because with a lot of this cancel culture energy that's floating around, everyone's like, I made a mistake, I'm getting fired. And everyone's like, they made a mistake, let's fire them. And I'm like, whoa, you invested a lot of time and energy to train that person up. Like, you just paid the ultimate price from their mistake. Now let that be to your advantage moving forward. Don't let them go to your direct competitor. Take all your learnings, and then you paid the price in the mistake, and they get to reap the benefits in the back half, because that's what makes you strong. Being forged in fire, it's from the mistake. And willing to forgive them sets them free, so they don't operate out of shame, guilt, because that's a very low frequency energetically. If you guys ever read things like Power versus Force, there's not much rated lower than that. So you don't want staff members operating at very low frequencies, not to be all big tree hugging hippie, which I kind of am, but yeah, it matters. We do it here in the Miller. What was that?
I was going to say that, when you're dealing with staff is one thing, but if you think about it, if you've had an issue with a product or service and you have a client that's complaining, if you can reach out to them and turn them around, those people who had the problem often become the best advocates.
Oh, hands down, hands down. Yeah. My best friend, Chris Neal, we're best friends now because I went over there to beat him up. True story. 13, he didn't know how to do math on the bowling. You know, if you do a spare, you add one, you do a strike, you add the next two. He didn't comprehend that. And I rubbed it in his face. And next, you know, kids are pushing each other and whatever that was, middle school. Oh, I'm going to come to your house. It was like a big thing. So I came home and I grabbed the bike and I go, I'm going to Chris's house, kick his ass. Mom's like, have a nice day. She didn't hear a word I had to say. She was too busy. She had a lot of stuff going on. You know, she didn't even recognize the word that came out of my mouth. Best friends to this day. So Miguel, do you got some words of wisdom you'd love to share? Because, you know, obviously I'll let you share what your greatest challenge is, but you know, what's the greatest thing that you witnessed either from yourself or all your students? Because boy, how many students have come across your path right now through your classes and your courses and your work at school?
Let me answer the easy questions first. So we've got a student body of about 15,000 students here at Cal State University, San Marcos. And I'm in the College of Business. So on any given semester, I may have anywhere between 60 to 150 students in various classes, two of which I teach, which is sales and sales management. And I'll explain a little bit about my chops, what entitles me to do that, and leadership, both of which I've got 40 plus years experience doing that. And you'll recall, Ted and I became acquainted with this book back in the day.
New edition coming out here. You guys are going to get an email next week or two.
I saw that. You're promoting it. I see it.
Yeah.
And but it's interesting, the conversations that Wesley, Karen, Terry, John, Sherry, and Bill, all of you guys have been circling the wagon around things that we call leadership training. How do you framework? How do you establish a process and a system? So I worked with Xerox Corporation for 20 years, both in sales leadership, and operations management. So I know ops. And I worked for another little company called Paychecks for another 20 years, where I had a 1,500 person sales organization, sales managers and all that, and about $250 million budget. I don't say that to impress. I say that basically to impress upon you that you can learn, do, and have anything you want if you surround yourself, number one, people smarter than you are. Number two, check your ego at the door. Number three, you're not infallible in your thinking. And number four, there are tools out there in the marketplace, once you identify them correctly, through either proper mentorship or proper coaching, to use and integrate into your business. So let me talk a little bit about the people.
Well, do step number one, because man code, or do one of the steps, because I remember I said 1, 2, 3 too many. I trust everyone's going to, remember your 4 steps. But if you're willing to email them to me, I'll add it up in my write-up for those that are in my community here, so they can get access to all your steps.
Sure.
If you got a resource, that'd be great. But what was the one step you wanted to speak to?
So one step is, and I know this about myself, so I'm certified in emotional intelligence training, which is a skill that you should all evolve and develop to, because nobody teaches it to you. It's not a curriculum in classrooms unless you're in psychology, which I'm not. I'm in the business school. So I went out and got my own certification. I use a lot of tools. So can I do a little teaching briefly, Ted?
Sure. If you keep it brief, that'd be impressive.
It will be brief. If I had a brain that was already there, I'd show you a graphic. So the brain processes information in 3 different dimensions. First is the cognitive, which most people who hire people do not use cognitive assessment tools, unfortunately, and therefore they hire the wrong people for the wrong job. But let's assume you had the wisdom to use a cognitive tool and you knew which one to use. So now you've got somebody who has got the mathematical acuity and the smartness to work in your business. Second element would be the affective realm, which is tools like predictive index, DISC, Myers-Briggs, strengths finders. And I'm certified in 3 out of those 4. So I know how to position those tools. But the one that I'm most favorite is, I'm more interested in what people are going to do on the job, not how they feel about the job. We'll figure that out before we hire them. But I want to know what they're going to do if I hire them. So I use the Colby Index, Colby A Index, to determine how people take action that is specific to my business. And there's a tool called Right Fit that I help companies make a decision with. I also use it with our students. So those are the three phases. And now I'll stop teaching. And now I'll share my biggest challenge. My biggest challenge is working for people who have poor leadership skills.
Working for me. Well, okay. So the insinuation is, without calling out who that is, that whoever you're working for currently or have worked with has poor leadership. So the first thing that needs to be said there, so we all have had this, if it's your employer, your business partner, JV partner, or staff members, the second you go to judge someone, you can no longer influence them. So the conundrum you can have is what happens when they're superior to your position. So I alluded to earlier that Chet and I were partners and we readjusted our 50-50 split when, hey, who's going to spend more money on that radio ad? Well, that last radio ad didn't work. And Chet goes, okay, let's have a private conversation. Jay bailed and Chet and I renegotiated our terms and he became the senior partner in an instant, as well as it should be. Yet I felt some of the same conundrums. And we found Tony Robbins as a business partner. Well, we didn't find him. Chet very much had him in his crosshairs to be his partner for quite some time, and I helped facilitate making that happen. So I went to this guy, a new resource, and said, hey, I got some conundrums going on here. And I shared something very similar. And the first thing he told me was that what I shared with you. He goes, you know, if you're influencing him, you can't judge him. And I was like, okay, so what is it you think that what is it you think they're after? Like, what is it you think they're ultimately after? So the person with poor leadership skills, if they're not enlightened enough to have great leadership skills, maybe they just don't have the emotional intelligence. They haven't read Anthony's book. By the way, is that your favorite book? What's your favorite emotional intelligence book, Miguel?
The one that's written by the PhD that owns Talent Smart in La Jolla.
Okay. And then we'll put those in our resources. I promote Anthony's.
I can give you a bibliography of whatever you want.
Yeah. I just reference, the other one that I think everyone, references as well. And so what do you think that person, whoever you're frustrated most with, when you think about that, him or her, do you know what they're after? Because you have enough sensory acuity, you might know it. Do you know what they're after? What is it?
Position power.
Yeah. Ego trip. So Tony was like, well, then if you know that's what they're after, then why don't you just give it to them?
No, I'd rather pack up my marbles and go away.
Then maybe you should pack up your marbles and go away.
Yeah.
But Tony goes, but one thing to consider is the story that you have on why you won't. And so when we took enough time to consider this, what I recognized was more often than not, that's a cry for help. When someone with poor leadership skills and someone has a greater skill in a particular area, but they're flexing up to say, hey, but I'm still in power, is the wounded. It's I don't know the doctor's name. It was just on Joe Rogan, whatever. Interesting looking dude. But he said something like this. He goes, that's a childhood coping technique that no longer serves them. Which is like, that's a cry for help. That's someone who's basically saying, I'm hoping you'll have the leadership skills I don't and not reject me and hopefully show me the way or hopefully help me in some way, shape, or form, or hopefully go first. Because leaders, what's interesting about the word leadership is whoever has the leadership goes first. The conundrum is we have a story that those that are in a superior position should be the ones to go first. But just like a marriage, the answer to who goes first is always the same. Whoever gets conscious first. Sometimes it's you chronically. And then you got to question, is this a relationship worth staying in? But that was a profound breakthrough that really radically changed the way I was able to approach my partner, because I was able to move in from empathy to compassion. And my hallucination of what compassion means is when I was shown this, it was kind of this idea of like, think of someone that you love. And I was like, okay, I could see that. Now, is there someone you love, but you don't accept? And I was like, oh yeah, Uncle Tommy, right? Something like that. That was easy to come up with. Now, but think of love and acceptance. I was like, oh, okay, we're getting real now. And it ratcheted up to a new level. But then it went into, now think of unconditional love and unconditional acceptance. And that got heavy real fast. And that's compassion once you've walked a mile in their shoes. From that place, you can thoroughly understand, of course, from who they are, they would be acting not as the leader they should be. And so we can serve, but I just call it step up or step out. I hold standards for my environment and who hangs out with me. I'm not confrontational isn't the word. I'm willing to lean into the discomfort, which is typically keeping you based on a fear, to approach another human being to talk about whatever the oil and water, the rough conflict, or whatever it may be. I lean into that as an embrace the suck kind of mentality from military. And I go seek that out so I can come to a new degree of understanding. So for me, it's either up or out. Like, what virtue matters to me most, where I'm going to draw my lines in the sand, because it comes down to virtues. Because if we try to make decisions on beliefs, that's what Tony helped me with. He goes, you have a story justified underneath the belief structure. And I go, yes. And then he didn't say this, but I say this all the time. I'm like, think of the way you think of God. Think of the way you think of your politics. Did you feel the same way 10 years ago, 20 years, 30 years ago? Or did you all grow? Did any of you enlighten? Or do you feel the same way you did when you were a teenager about politics and God? Any takers want to answer? Do you feel the same, or have you enlightened? So
Little upgrade.
a little upgrade. So you don't even believe with your own beliefs 10, 20, 30 years later. So why would you be so committed to them now? But virtues, those are things that aren't going to change like the wind. So invite those to step up, or you invite them to step out. But they deserve to have the communication to even be shown how they're acting out alignment to virtues that you agreed upon with the terms of a working relationship. Or if you've never discussed them before, you get to reintroduce them, because I don't think we're ever done refining our culture and our company and our work environments. I think that's something that's ever evolving. It's an ecology like your body, and it's something you get to nurture frequently. You get to express out those toxins. That stress will drain your glands, and those adrenals only get flushed in two ways: physical exercise or massage. So you got to do one of the two. And sometimes you got to massage relationships out, right? Or you got to take adrenal support to help you with it. But I hope that was helpful for you, because that really repositioned my ability to really see people for what they really are, versus the immature, which is a childhood trauma coping technique being expressed. Like, if you're seeing someone who chronically is behaving out of alignment in your company or a client, doing so consistently, that's usually an old coping technique that they picked up early when they had childhood.
Thanks for listening to Business Breakthroughs with Ted Miller III, helping you discover breakthroughs to the single greatest challenge to getting your business to where you really, really want it to be. Join us every week at this time, or anytime 24/7, by listening to us on iTunes at Business Breakthroughs with Ted Miller III.